Today, I'd like to inform you that Dorotech is stronger than ever, ready to take a bold step forward and soar into the future. Very soon, we will hold the 5th Dead or Alive tournament.
Kevin, what the fuck is going on in Dead or Alive 5?
Lots of breast physics.
Okay, let's get that out of the way right here up front. The ladies in Dead or Alive 5 have gigantic tatas, and they move around a lot. So much so that you would figure it would be kind of uncomfortable when they're doing jump kicks to just be,
I was thinking that somebody at Team Ninja, that's their job. Like, they animate the breasts, and they go home to their wife, and she's like, "What'd you do all day?" "Well, I animated breasts."
Anyway, folks, we're talking about Dead or Alive 5, the latest in Dead or Alive by Team Ninja, and this is the first Dead or Alive since Inagaki left Team Ninja. So it's kind of been a question of whether this is going to stack up to the previous ones, which I honestly don't know. Kevin, is Dead or Alive I'm sure there's a group of people who are way into Dead or Alive and they play all the games, but I wonder how big that group of people is. Is it just
considering the amount of work that went into this one, it's and the fact that there's been 5 of them now, and they have the volleyball.
Yeah,
it's got to be somewhat successful, right? It has to be.
It's successful enough to drag in, completely inexplicably, 3 characters from Virtua Fighter for apparently no good reason outside of, hey, look, here's some Virtua Fighter characters. This game is weird. This game is fucking strange.
Yeah. Sega probably didn't even approve it. So get your copies now, everyone, because before there's going to be an injunction against the game.
So Team Ninja's just what should we do? Let's put in some guys from Virtua Fighter. Do we have permission to do that? Nah, it'll be fine. Sega doesn't give a shit. They're too busy with Sonic.
They probably don't remember that they're their own characters anymore.
Yeah, somebody over at Sega. Hey, this Virtua... We don't own Virtua Fighter 2. No, we developed Virtua Fighter. What the... So, Dead or Alive 5... Dead or Alive 5 is split up into... it's got all your standard modes of, arcade mode and tag mode, and there's a time attack and stuff. But then I think that I don't know if this was in any of the previous games, but they have one of the most ridiculous story modes I've ever seen in a fighting game, which is saying something after Mortal Kombat last year. I thought that nothing could be more ludicrous than Mortal Kombat and its Outland and all that stuff, but Mortal Kombat looks like fucking, British sitcom compared to the shit going on in Dead or Alive 5. I don't understand who or what or... and I just kind of constantly found myself going, all right, sure, Virtua Fighter, whatever you say.
Yeah, it's not really the type of fighting game where one person makes a quip and the other person says something and then they fight.
Yeah.
There's some long scenes going on in this, and you're just they're kind of baffling.
And the fact is that so many of the stories in the story mode end with people fighting for what are the most ridiculous reasons ever. You just have somebody just walks into somewhere and they're like, "All right, let's fight. You and me, we're gonna fight." Let's talk about Mortal Kombat before. Mortal Kombat had some ridiculous reasons for people to be fighting. This even worse. Even worse than that. Yeah. But the story, as near as I can understand, after Dead or Alive 4, this organization called DOA Tech, DOA Tech, which apparently doesn't stand for anything, has been, they got taken over by Helena, and she's trying to make it a good company again, but then there's this clone of, what's her name? The big one, Kasumi, called Alpha 152 that's out there, and then there's the ninjas, and they're trying to kill her because she left her clan, and Ryu Hayabusa from the Ninja Gaiden series is in here as one of those ninja. There's just ninjas and ninjas. there's the white trash chick and her dad, Hollywood Hulk Hogan, and they work on an oil rig, and he's got a motorcycle, and the Justin Bieber guy is hanging out with this drunk dude, and I don't know, like I feel like it just sounds like the ravings of a crazy person, but somehow it's kind of compelling.
Well, I also like how they also fight in the most ridiculous environments too. Let's fight inside a circus, or let's fight when a subway is exploding. You'd think you would stop the fight at some point, like you just got hit by a subway car or whatever,
My favorite
or a train car.
is when they're fighting on the top of the building and you smash somebody's face into the side of one girder. The entire building starts falling over, and they're just like, no, we got to keep fighting. Or in the jungle when you're going over a waterfall in this tiny little wooden raft, and it's just like, yeah, we're just gonna go over the waterfall. Keep fighting. So I don't know. The Dead or Alive has always been a kind of a weird game. Before this, I played probably Dead or Alive 2 was the last one that I played. I remember manhandling a friend of mine into buying Dead or Alive 2 when he got his PlayStation 2 originally. He wanted to buy that Smuggler's Run game that Rockstar put out, and I was like, Dune buggies, fuck that. Get this one with all the chicks with the big tatas. And
your priorities were straight when you were younger.
Absolutely. So the Dead or Alive it's kind of an odd duck of a fighting game because it's not as complicated as a lot of. I mean, it's got a punch button, a kick button, a throw button, and then a combination block and catch or parry. What do they call that? It's like a catch button or something like that. It's kind of a counter button.
Yeah, it's counter. It's a counter, but yeah.
And so you have this real kind of it's kind of one of those a minute to learn, a lifetime to master sort of things where the action in the game is really fast, but as the difficulty ramps up, you start to see that there's this really intricate system below it that has to do with anticipating enemy moves and then deciding whether you're going to try to block and counter, or whether you're going to try to catch them, or what you're going to do. They've also added in a new thing here where if you're below 50% health, your health bar starts flashing. You can do these big super moves, and all of this adds up to. I mean, when I first saw it, and I was like, oh, it's got one punch button, one kick button. That's going to be easy. And then, of course, 4 hours later, the computer was whooping my ass, and I was like,
it's not like a block. You don't just fight and block, and then you take your turn and they block and everything. You can sidestep, and it has that. They call it the rock paper scissors type formula, where strikes can be countered with holds, and holds can be countered with throws.
Yeah,
and throws can be countered with strikes, and strikes you can work into combos and everything. So it's got a fair amount of depth to it because of the way you have to try and counter things and not get crushed in the game.
Yeah, and actually, it's funny too because in the we've talked about this a little bit before, and I think that Tekken Tag was the last last fighting game that we reviewed, and I feel like I got to give this game a lot of credit for in the story mode that you do. You have whenever the characters get done saying all this shit to each other, you have a 1-round fight. And in that fight, they've got a sub-objective that you could choose to do or choose not to do. And that objective is essentially teaching you how to play the game one fight at a time. So you start with, land 3 punches, but then later on you'll get into this, where you'll have to do a maneuver where when you're being hit, then you catch the hold in the middle of it, or you do, a special move or something like that. And recently I felt like one of the things that a lot of fighting games have been lacking is a way for people who don't play these games to get into them. And I feel like this game does a really good job of giving you that opportunity if you want to try to complete these sub-objectives. And as the game goes on, it gets harder and harder to do that, forcing you to become better and better at the game in order to do it.
Right, yeah. When I first started playing it threw that thing up there. It was throw the 3 punches and stuff. I threw the 3 punches, and I thought it was going to end.
Yeah.
I thought it was that was it, and then the guy's still kicking my ass. And I'm like, okay, apparently I got to keep going.
But yeah, I mean, there's that. There's so that's the whole story mode, and then as mentioned before, there's the arcade mode. There's your standard versus mode. There's the game has essentially a full tag team thing built into it. It's not the Tekken or it's Marvel vs. Capcom kind of rules of tag, where if one person gets goes all the way down to the bottom of their health. The next person jumps in, and you have to basically beat both of them in order to continue, which is nice. And
it's got like 22 characters. It's got some unlocks, different outfits. I don't know, everybody that is in these like fighting games, they must all just, that's why they do it. You're like, why do they all fight each other? Because they need new clothes, apparently.
Well, I don't know about you, Kevin. When I go to Target, that's what it's like for me as a salesperson. It's like, you dare to buy a Ghostbusters T-shirt? And then we fight, we tear the whole store up and everything. Oh, that's something to mention is that this game actually has some really impressive stages in it, and and there's this interesting way where if you hit somebody kind of into the edge of a stage hard enough, a lot of times you'll get like a cut scene where they'll take a damage and you'll move to another kind of version of that stage. They all tend to have about 3 different places where you can kind of rotate back to the beginning of where you were before. And, I mean, some of them make, 0 sense. Like where they're fighting in between 2 armies shooting at each other, or at the circus.
Totally crazy. Yes, right. It's totally ridiculous. You mentioned the cliffhangers.
Oh yeah. Yeah, some of the levels have some levels have something called it's kind of a quick time event thing where you can knock somebody into the edge of the building and they're hanging on, and then as you run at them, you can hit a button to hit them again on the way down. And I mean, just a lot of stuff to kind of vary it up, to keep it from getting stale.
A lot of interactive environments in the game, and I mean, I really came away with this a lot more impressed than I thought it was going to be. Mm-hmm. Because I've never really got into this series, and I always just looked like it was the sort of, it was the TNA fighter type of thing, and never took it that seriously. But actually, it's got a lot going on here. I mean, it was actually a really fun game to play.
Yeah. There's a few problems with it. Like one of the things that I noticed is that it seemed like the Virtua Fighter characters didn't really they kind of. I mean, this is kind of a weird thing to say, but they weren't. First of all, they weren't as flamboyant as the Dead or Alive characters. Like it was, like they just kind of took their their clothing and their outfits and stuff, which is kind of a weird thing to complain about. But they just kind of seemed a little bit out of place. They didn't seem to have as much character. Like every time they showed up in the story, they were just kind of like, "I'm here, let's fight," Yeah. They didn't really have very much characterization, and I felt like they fit into the fighting style well enough. They just didn't. They kind of stuck out a little bit to me. They didn't quite seem like they totally belonged as much as the other characters, the actual Dead or Alive characters did. Which is kind of
you didn't think they were really going to make the Sega characters cool, did you? Competitor.
Well, I don't know. I mean, we saw. I guess the thing is that I was just thinking back while I was playing those characters to when I played Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And they managed to integrate those Tekken characters and the Street Fighter characters very well together in Street Fighter Cross Tekken. And here they kind of stood out a little bit as these guys are good, but they just don't seem quite. I mean, and I don't know. Maybe I'm just talking out of my ass here. They just didn't seem like they fit in quite as well with the crazy Dead or Alive universe, where you've got stupid Zack in his helicopter driving around doing stuff, and they all fight on an oil rig, and that woman's got a cruise ship the size of a city that she roams around in, and there's all this crazy, stupid, weird nonsense. These guys seemed like they seemed too sensible for a Dead or Alive game, Kevin. I was expected to just see them in the background watching the Dead or Alive characters going, man, when you fight, do you do a flip? No, I don't do a flip. I just kick him in the face. Like, yeah, me too. I don't know why they're doing so many flips and shit. So there's all that. There's some other weird things here. There's what I like to call the super goddamn creepy mode. I don't know if you saw this, Kevin, where you can essentially choose 2 characters and you can take pictures while they're fighting, and you can actually pause the fight and rotate the camera around and get some saucy pictures. I'm not gonna say that I spent a lot of time in that mode, but I did feel like a complete pervo the entire time I was in there.
You had to take a shower after you got done.
Yeah, I was just like, okay, ew, no, I don't, no. So let's see. I guess there's a couple of new characters in here. There's Rig, who is this guy who was born and raised on an oil rig, apparently. Okay, dead or alive. And then there's also Mila, who is kind of an MMA fighting girl who we see. The game kind of starts out with her, and it follows her a little bit.
Yeah.
And they're good. They're a little bit more. Mila's a little bit more of a grappler than I think a lot of the ninja ladies that you see are. And I don't really know if I have a hell of a lot else to say about this, Kevin.
It is just a fighting game. There's only so much you can say about it. It doesn't have like some varied story. Well, the story's crazy, but you know what I mean. Like the gameplay doesn't switch up that much.
Yeah. Did you play online at all?
I didn't. No.
Okay. I didn't. Unfortunately, this game does have an online pass, so it was the sort of thing that I unfortunately was not able to play online either. Well, I guess, unless there's anything else that you can think of that we haven't covered, we can go on and give on out some ratings if you feel like it.
Yeah, I think obviously if you're a Dead or Alive guy, you're going to pay full price for this. I don't know who you are, Dead or Alive guy, but if you are out there, this game is like I think it's a big improvement over the previous series, and it seems to be getting a lot of pretty positive press from people. But I personally, there's a lot of fighting game choices out there, and it's sort of a bit of a wacky universe, and I don't know if I would play it like, if my girlfriend or something would come over and, that would be on the TV. She wouldn't look at me right, So I've got to kind of just give it a high bargain bin.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that it's actually one thing we didn't mention was that this is an extremely good looking game. Very good looking. They've integrated, and once again, I want to go all too far off into the Pervo territory here, but people are real sweaty after fights, and a lot of times they're real dirty too. And sometimes when all you're wearing is an American flag bikini, that's pretty cool. But but outside of that, the character's hair looks real nice. The clothing all looks real good. It's got really nice lighting effects, and it kind of struck me. This is an extremely good looking game.
They did a really good job on it.
Yeah, it's a good looking game. I feel like if you're interested in getting into this franchise, that it's a good place to start. The way that I feel like they've tweaked at least, and I can't speak for 4 because I didn't play, like I said, 2. But as I understand it, they've tweaked the countering system here so that it's not as easy to just kind of cheese your way out of when somebody else is fighting. So I feel like there's a vector here for people to spend a lot of time getting really acquainted with the characters and mastering each character. And I feel like that's also something that's accessible that people could do offline by jacking up the difficulty level and then maybe go online and play with friends and stuff like that. So yeah, I'm going to agree with you. I give it a high bargain bin. I don't think it's necessarily something that everybody in the world should buy. But if you're a fan of Dead or Alive, I can't think of any good reason not to buy this.
Right, exactly.
And I can think of one good reason why you should buy this, because if they sell enough of these, you know what that means, Kevin.
Dead or Alive 6?
Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball 3.
Woohoo!
And then we get to review that on this show. I'll take all semblance of being an upright and civilized gentleman off of this show, and we're just going to go the entire time.
I am most satisfied with the results of our test.
Are you one of the world's greatest fighters? Then get your ass in the tourney.